My parents just told 300 wedding guests I'm gifting my $600,000 house to my brother. I never agree. I've always been the responsible son. While my brother, Leo, spent his 20s traveling the world on my parents' credit cards, I was working 16-hour days as a master carpenter and contractor. 3 years ago, I bought a plot of land in the mountains and spent every weekend building my dream home. I did the plumbing, the electrical, the stonework, everything. It's worth $600,000 now, and I don't owe the bank a single cent. It is my sanctuary. Leo finally decided to settle down with a woman who has very expensive tastes. My parents, who are now broke from funding Leo's lifestyle, have been pressuring me for months to help him out. I offered him a job. He laughed. I offered him a small loan. He insulted me. I thought that was the end of it. Last night was Leo's wedding. During the main toast, my father stood up with a smirk that made my blood run cold. He told 300 people that as a testament to family legacy, I had agreed to sign the deed of my mountain estate over to Leo and his new bride. The entire room stood up and cheered. Leo looked at me and mouthed the words, "Thank you, big brother." My mother leaned in and whispered, "Don't you dare ruin this moment for him. You can always build another house. Leo needs this for his image." I didn't argue. I didn't cause a scene. I simply stood up, finished my drink, and walked out of the venue. I drove straight to my house. When I arrived, I found that my parents had given Leo a spare key months ago. They had already moved a professional staging company into my home. My custom-made furniture was gone, replaced by modern trash. My grandfather's antique tool chest, the only thing I had left of him, was sitting in the driveway next to a dumpster. That was the moment I chose the nuclear option. Since I am the sole owner and there is no lease agreement, I called a heavy-duty towing company and a locksmith. I had every single piece of their new furniture hauled away as abandoned property. Then, I called the local sheriff. I explained that a group of people was planning to occupy my private property without a permit. At 4 a.m., the wedding bus arrived. Leo, his bride, and my parents stepped off, expecting a luxury honeymoon suite. Instead, they were met by 2 deputies and a no trespassing sign. When my father tried to push past the deputy, claiming he owned the son, so he owned the house, he was promptly handcuffed for disorderly conduct. I watched the whole thing from my security cameras. I spoke through the gate intercom. "The house is staying mine. The furniture is at the impound lot. And I've already filed a restraining order against all of you." The fallout was instant. My parents are facing legal fees they can't afford. Leo's new wife is already talking about an annulment because the lifestyle he promised was a lie. I've blocked every relative who called me selfish. I chose the nuclear option because if you try to use my sweat and blood to buy your favorite son's happiness, you're going to end up with nothing but a criminal record.
My manager just tried to gaslight me into believing a $20,000 commission disappeared due to a clerical error, while he's literally flexing a brand new Porsche in the parking lot. How do I dismantle his life without HR protecting him? I've been the top sales lead at my firm for 3 years. Last month, I closed a deal worth $2 million. My contract guarantees a 1% commission. That's $20,000. When payday came, my bonus was missing. I went to my manager, Dave. He looked me in the eye and said the company had a budget shortfall and bonuses were cancelled. 10 minutes later, I saw Dave in the parking lot showing off a brand new Porsche SUV. He told a coworker it was a gift to himself for a great quarter. I knew exactly where my money went, but I didn't scream. I didn't complain. I went back to my desk and started digging. Dave was sloppy. Since I handle the sales CRM, I have access to the internal ledgers. I found out Dave wasn't just stealing my bonus. He was ghosting clients, creating fake invoices for services never rendered, and funneled the money into a shell company. I spent the whole weekend downloading every single transaction, every fake email, and every forged signature. I didn't go to HR. HR is there to protect the company, not me. Monday morning, I sent a massive encrypted file to the board of directors and an anonymous tip to the IRS. By Tuesday, the office was crawling with auditors. Dave was escorted out in handcuffs in front of the entire staff. Look at that, me bebe, just wait. The board was so terrified of a lawsuit that they not only paid my $20,000 bonus, But they also gave me a $10,000 loyalty kicker and offered me Dave's old position. Dave is currently facing 10 years for wire fraud and tax evasion. His wife filed for divorce, and the Porsche was repossessed yesterday. I chose the nuclear option because if you steal from the person making you look good, you.
Aita, for initiating a scorched earth legal campaign against my mother-in-law after discovering she orchestrated a fraudulent power of attorney to plunder my late wife's estate while she was comatose. My wife passed away a year ago and bequeathed everything to me, including the house where her mother lived. I wanted to be the bigger person. I let her stay rent-free. Fatal mistake. Last month, I tried to pay for property maintenance and my card was declined. I went to the bank. Someone had withdrawn $50,000 using a power of attorney allegedly signed by my wife 3 days before she died. My wife was in a coma at that time. It was a physical impossibility. I reviewed the bank's security footage. It was her, my mother-in-law, wearing a wig, and my wife's favorite coat. I went to the house and confronted her. She showed zero remorse. She told me that money belonged to her for putting up with me for years. She claimed I was an outsider in her family and that I couldn't evict her because the law protects the elderly. She was dead wrong. I am a contract attorney. I audited my wife's original will. There was a specific conduct clause. If any immediate relative attempted to dispute assets through fraudulent means, they forfeited any right of occupancy or immediate residency. I called the police and handed over the bank tapes. They charged her with identity theft and felony bank fraud. But I didn't stop there. She owned a small antique shop operating out of a commercial space I owned. That same afternoon, I changed the locks on the shop and the house. When she returned from the station on bail, all her belongings were in trash bags on the curb. She screamed that I was a monster. I told her I was simply executing the contract she shredded when she decided to rob her own deceased daughter. She is now living in a budget motel awaiting trial. Her other children went no contact because she tried to scam them too. My bank account was frozen for investigation, but the bank admitted fault and I'm recovering the funds. She texted me a desperate apology yesterday. I blocked her number. I chose the nuclear option because she chose to dance on my wife's grave for a few stacks of cash.
Update. My entitled neighbor finally realized that the 6 inches he tried to steal for his new driveway actually belonged to a historical preservation zone, and now the city is forcing him to demolish his entire garage. I've lived in my house for 10 years without a single problem, until Karen and her husband, Bob, moved in next door. 2 months ago, Bob decided he wanted a wider driveway for his boat. One morning, I woke up to find him tearing down the fence I built 5 years ago. He claimed the property line was wrong and that he was taking back his 6 inches. I tried to show him the original survey, but he literally threw it in my face and told me to sue him. So I did exactly that, but with a twist. I didn't just call a lawyer. I called a professional land surveyor and a city historian. You see, I live in a town where the houses are over a century old. During the survey, we discovered something Bob didn't know. The property line wasn't just 6 inches off. It was actually 2 feet in my favor. But the real nuclear option was the historian's discovery. It turns out the land Bob was building his massive new garage on was part of a protected historical easement. According to city law, no permanent structures can be built within 5 feet of that specific boundary to protect the old stone drainage system underneath. Bob hadn't just stolen my land, he had violated a federal preservation act. I waited until the garage was 95% finished. He had spent over $80,000 on custom stonework and a heated floor. Then I filed my report. The city inspector arrived the next day with a stop work order and a demolition mandate. Bob tried to bribe him. The inspector added a fine for attempted bribery. Because the structure violated the Preservation Act, it couldn't be fixed. It had to be removed entirely. Bob's insurance refused to cover it because he built it without the proper historical permits. Last week, I sat on my porch with a cold beer as a wrecking crew tore his $80,000 dream into rubble. He's now being sued by the city and had to take out a second mortgage just to pay the fines. He doesn't look at me anymore. I chose the nuclear option because if you try to take my yard, I'll make sure you have no yard left to defend.
I just found out my perfect sister and my parents drained my entire college and wedding fund to pay for her third destination wedding. Now they're wondering why the caterers, the venue, and the florist all disappeared 6 hours before the ceremony. For 5 years, I worked 2 jobs to build a savings account for my future. It was nearly $40,000. My parents had joint access because the account was opened when I was 17. Yesterday, I went to pay the final deposit for my own wedding venue. The balance was zero. My mother admitted they borrowed it because my sister, the golden child, just had to have a wedding in Tuscany. They thought I'd just understand and figure it out later. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I called my sister and asked if she enjoyed her flight to Italy. She laughed and told me to stop being dramatic. That was the moment I chose the nuclear option. Since my parents used my money to pay the vendors for her wedding, the contracts were technically under my name and email for accounting purposes. I spent 4 hours on the phone with every single vendor in Italy. Since I was the one who paid, I had the legal right to cancel. I canceled the 5-star catering, the floral arrangements, the luxury villa, and the open bar. Because it was less than 24 hours before the event, I couldn't get a full refund, but I managed to claw back about $15,000 in cancellation credits issued only to me. I turned off my phone and went to a spa. My sister arrived at the venue with 200 guests, only to find the gates locked and a property closed sign. No food, no music, no wine. My parents tried to call me from the airport, but they were already blocked. They had to pay out of pocket for emergency pizza and a cheap motel for 200 angry relatives. My sister's dream wedding became a national family scandal. My parents are now being sued by the venue for breach of conduct. They demanded I give the $15,000 back. I told them that money was my consultation fee for teaching them a lesson about theft. I chose the nuclear option because if you steal my future to fund your party, you don't get a party at all.
My extended family just served me with a lawsuit claiming ancestral right to the lakefront cabin. I spent 10 years and $200,000 renovating. They want me out by Sunday. Does anyone know if a scorched earth defense is legal? 10 years ago, my grandfather left me his dilapidated hunting cabin. It was a ruin with no electricity or plumbing. I spent every weekend and every cent I had turning it into a luxury lakeside retreat. My cousins, who hadn't visited Grandpa in 20 years, suddenly showed up last summer. When they saw the wraparound deck and the custom fireplace, their eyes turned into dollar signs. They filed a collective lawsuit, claiming Grandpa wasn't in his right mind when he signed the deed over to me. Their lawyer found a technicality in the original 1950s land grant that suggested the property couldn't be subdivided. They didn't want the cabin. They wanted to sell it to a developer for $1 million. The judge issued a temporary injunction, ordering me to vacate the premises while the court reviewed the deed. But my cousins made one massive mistake. They sued for the land, not the structure. I dug up the original permits from my renovation. Since the cabin was technically unstable when I received it, I had filed the permits as a temporary modular reconstruction, legally. The house was a chattel personal property sitting on the land, not a permanent fixture of it. The night before I had to hand over the keys, I chose the nuclear option. I hired a professional moving and demolition crew. Since I owned the cabin itself, I had every legal right to do whatever I wanted with it. We didn't just take the furniture. We took the windows, the custom hardwood floors, the copper piping, and the solar array. When the crew was done, I had the entire structure dismantled and moved to a storage lot. My cousins arrived on Sunday morning with a real estate agent and a bottle of champagne, expecting a luxury villa. Instead, they found a muddy patch of dirt and the original 1950s concrete slab. They tried to sue me for destruction of property, but my lawyer laughed them out of court. I hadn't destroyed anything. I simply moved my personal belongings. Now they own a useless, protected wetland that they can't build on without a 5-year environmental study they can't afford. I chose the nuclear option because if I can't enjoy the house I built with my own hands, nobody will.